Well, welcome back to an episode of the New News Podcast. I don't really know how else to start this other than it's a sad and frustrating day to say the least on the podcast. If Sandy was here right now, I almost called him Sonny, I think he'd be crying. And I want to cry because this is really frustrating. But we'll get into the news. Basically, if you somehow haven't heard already, Sonny Gray was pulled from his start on Monday with some hamstring tightness, and then had an MRI last night, and then it came out today from John Mozeliak that the injury was, at least in their eyes, not as severe as they thought it could be, and that it's a mild strain. They didn't put a timetable on anything, but it shouldn't be anything major. It is important to note that Sonny Gray did deal with hamstring injuries in the 2022 season, and I believe it affected him at 3 different points of the season with 2 injured list stints. One time he didn't miss a start, but then twice he missed multiple weeks. So that's the current state of affairs. Sonny Gray's opening day start is now in jeopardy. It definitely hasn't been ruled out, but it's looking more and more difficult. Even just simply for the fact that if he has to stop pitching for a couple weeks, that means he only has 1, maybe 2 weeks to fully ramp up, which isn't a lot of time. So that already messes with the timetable, let alone if he has to sit out even longer than that. We'll get into all of it. We've got a lot to talk about. Seriously, if you're in the chat, throw some questions our way, throw your thoughts our way. We want to know how you're feeling about everything right now, all the above. If you're new to the New News Podcast, subscribe because we talk all the time about Cardinals baseball. I had Katie Wu on last week. I have a bunch of fun episodes coming. We just had a top 10 most important Cardinals for 2024, and Sonny Gray was our number 1 player. So if that tells you how big of a problem this is, I hope that does. Andrew, what was your initial reactions?
Well, my initial reaction when I heard that he got pulled from his start was like, please don't be the elbow or be an arm injury.
Yeah, true.
It wasn't. Like, immediately we got that cleared up pretty quickly that it was something with hamstring. So it's not as bad as it could be with an injury to Sonny Gray. Obviously, it's not ideal. We don't want to see him miss any time because after him, the rotation looks pretty bad. I'm not really going to sugarcoat that. Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, and probably Zach Thompson rounding it out. Not a lot of inspiring names in that list. And definitely not what we wanted to see coming into the season after what we saw last year. Honestly, probably if you take Gray out of the equation, it's a worse rotation than we had last year, even with Waino and Woodford giving you pretty much nothing because you had Jordan Montgomery, who had a really good season. Jack Flaherty had some upside. I don't really see that in the rest of this rotation here. So yeah, really hoping that he can come back and be ready for opening day against the Dodgers. I've been watching a lot of Dodger baseball this spring, and
I wonder why.
I wonder why.
Yeah, you might want to cover that jersey in the back.
Sorry. But from a perspective of I have to root against them for the first 4 games of the season, it's just I don't see a lot of hope if Sonny Gray isn't back and ready for that. So it's not great. We'll get into what they could do to fix that and what they're not going to do to fix that because John Mozeliak made it pretty clear that they're going to roll with the rotation that they've got now. They're not looking to add any additional pieces unless someone else gets hurt, which would be even worse than it is right now. So we can get into what we think they should or shouldn't do, but ultimately it's disappointing that they won't really do anything to fix this problem.
Yeah, at least that's how it appears right now, and I don't see that changing. But he did crack the door open of maybe that could change, but as of right now, and also I'm trying to think realistically here too. Like it's a mild strain; he's not out for the season, so they have that in the back pocket to say like it's not like he's supposed to miss a couple months. Yeah, I'm not saying they shouldn't make a move. I'm just saying like it makes sense why in the way they operate they don't make rash decisions like that, and it's only. I think that's the first time we've debuted that one live, so I guess I was carrying Mo's water there.
A little bit.
So no, I'm not saying they should do that. I'm just thinking through their process. Like I could see them potentially changing the tune. Well, I doubt it. I highly doubt it, but I could see a world where they change the tune later. Because it's only been 24 hours. So like they're not the type of team that's going to do something in 24 hours. Like we know the Cardinals, they don't change their plans that quickly. So maybe in a couple weeks they would think differently. I doubt it. That was my point. Not carrying Mo's water. I do want to apologize though, or maybe not apologize, but acknowledge something that I haven't talked enough about the potential issue of. I think it was implied and it was so obvious to me that it's like I never said it much out loud because I'm like, but here's the point. We never really talked much about what would happen if Sonny Gray went down. Like we've talked about the rotation as a whole, but like in most scenarios we talked about, well, like if Lynn or Gibson or Michaelis or Matts get hurt, then Thompson comes in. Like we haven't talked about a world where Sonny Gray's the one who's hurt. And again, part of that's because I think it's so obvious that Sonny Gray, if he goes down, this rotation is not good. And so I didn't really think we needed to talk about it all that much. But here we are. Sonny Gray's now down. Even if it's just for a couple starts, that's still a big deal. But again, if it is only a couple starts, I personally think they can survive. Like if that's the question here, like is it frustrating? Yes. Should this force them to make a bigger move because of the potential? Like it's showing the potential for the cracks in the rotation already. Yes. But if they stay the course, I'm not going to write off the season. Like I'm not one of those people who's the season's over already. I would disagree. I do think the rotation could be and should be. Now they have to play the game, so who knows? It might be the end of April, and it's like this rotation is worse than last year. But Woodford was that bad. Wainwright was that bad. Jack Flaherty was. I don't think you could say he was better than Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson. Pretty equal to Wash. Sure, the Jordan Montgomery side of it. So like you don't have the high end talent, but I think the back end of the rotation is significantly better than their back end rotation options last year. So even if they're not getting those like those really helpful Montgomery starts, they are getting better 4 and 5 starts, which I think matters. And the bullpen's a lot better, which I think is a big deal because even when somehow they would have a lead in a Michaelis start or have a lead in a Wainwright start, the bullpen would blow it. I trust this bullpen. I think this bullpen could be really good. But I'm telling you, like the margin for error, that's the big thing. The margin from error just went from like this to this. They just don't have like they're in so much trouble now. Like they can't afford another bad thing to happen. They can't afford the offense to struggle. They can't afford the bullpen to be bad. The bullpen has to be a strength now. No question. It has to be a strength. The lineup has to be a top 5 unit if Gray's out. Has to be. I'm really frustrated right now. And I think I've tried to explain away and I've tried to talk through why I think the way they built the rotation can win games, but I've been clear. It's not how I would have done it, right? When we talked about how they should build the rotation this offseason, I was talking about getting two of a Gray and a Glass now. Like you have to get 2 frontline guys and then get a third guy to round out the rotation. Never was I campaigning or saying, let's go get Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson and Sonny Gray. Like, yes, Sonny Gray, no to the other 2. They did it, fine. That's the world we live in. Can't change it. Even though we wish we could, which is what they're doing. And now they're paying the price for it. And so I think maybe we disagree a little bit on how much this means for the club's ceiling. I don't know, or maybe not ceiling, the club's ability to compete right now. I feel like you maybe are a little bit more down on if they'll be okay. Again, I think if he's only missing a couple starts, I don't think it will make a huge deal. But the thing that worries me more is that like, what if this hamstring continues to be an issue throughout the year? You know, or like what if something else happens and he goes down? Like this is showing how bad things can get. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if Gray only misses 2 starts, I don't really care because he can only affect those 2 games that he starts, right? Like Thompson's going to start instead of him in those 2 games. And
yeah, I guess you can make the argument that
yeah,
a good start from Gray helps the bullpen and helps the lineups.
Yeah.
Like it has ramifications, but I mostly agree with that.
Like he mainly just affects the game that he's starting in. And if Thompson provides like similar output and the offense does really well and we win that game anyway, then it doesn't really matter that that Thompson pitched instead of Gray. What concerns me more is that, like you said, in 2022, he had lingering hamstring issues that left him on the IL like many times during the season. And that's kind of what I don't want to deal with at all this season. We need to shore up the rotation. That was the goal from the start of the offseason, and we kind of failed at doing that. And we kind of said after they signed Lynn and Gibson, if they just go out and get Gray, then this offseason is kind of a failure, right? Like it just doesn't fully work without another frontline guy. And this is showing us exactly why that's the case. Now, I think we should go out and get Blake Snell And I think that's perfectly doable within the constraints, even if we want to avoid the luxury tax, because you can go out and you can trade Tommy Edman and clear like $8 million off the books for this year, and you can trade Steven Matz, who's getting paid $11 million. Um, do I want to part with Matz? No, not really, because I think he's the second best starter on this staff. But if you really absolutely cannot go above the luxury tax threshold, which honestly, if the DeWitts are as committed to winning as they say they are, then they should go over the tax. Honestly, like it doesn't matter. But if they're going to set the tax as a hard cap, they've got what, like 23 to 25 million to play with. If you go out and trade Tommy Edman and sign Blake Snell to one of like the Cody Bellinger, Matt Chapman kind of deals, you can still stay under the tax without completely like destroying your roster, right? Like that's fine. Tommy Edman is not necessary for this team's success anymore because they signed Brandon Crawford to replace Mason Wynn at shortstop. You can cover the innings in center. Am I completely comfortable with that? Not really. I don't really think.
But you're probably more comfortable with that than the rotation.
Yeah, I'm much more comfortable with Carlson getting more innings in center or giving Victor Scott an early chance than rolling out a rotation with nobody at the front. It's just it's as simple as that. Like that's the weakness of this team, and I'll sacrifice a little bit of defense in center field to get that back. I ranked Tommy Edman as my third most important player this season, but that was before we had Brandon Crawford, who I'm not completely sold on, but at least you have somebody that's not Jose Fermin that can back up shortstop if Mason Wynn isn't effective, right? Like it's not great, but it's not as bad as it could be.
Let's take a brief pause and we'll come back. We'll put a pin in this conversation because it's important. I've got some thoughts about what they should do as well. Agree with a lot of it. In the chat, seriously, let us know what you're thinking. Continue to let us know what you're thinking about this, what they should do in response to it, or vent about what you don't think they're going to do. But if you saw last week or this past Sunday's episode with Katie, we've got a new segment that we want to kind of jump in with real quick. And maybe this will just help us calm down a little bit. I'm not trying to say we don't freak out. I'm just saying, like, let's just have fun for a second and then let's get back to being mad because I want to be mad. But we're going to jump into our new segment, the Benches Clearing segment, powered by Tracy's Karate. And so anytime we do the segment, if we have a guest on, we'll ask them. Otherwise, it'll be us answering this question for ourselves. But we're going to answer some kind of self-defense question. Last week or on Sunday, Katie had to answer how many waves of third graders she could fight off, which that was fun. You should go check that out. This week, Andrew, I want to know who in baseball, and if you're in the chat, drop this as well. If there was a benches clearing brawl, who would be the player you would be most scared to see running your way? Who would be the guy you're like, I do not want that player running toward me to fight me?
See, I bounced back between a lot of different players when we were talking about this pre-show. Tyler O'Neill was one of the guys I thought about because he's just like massive and hits the weight room and benches like 400. And I don't really want to see that coming at me. There's some other guys. Ohtani, obviously, my guy, but he seems a little bit too nice to pick a fight with you. I'm going to go with Wilson Contreras.
Oh,
because I feel like he gets really upset and has a lot of fire. And I feel like if I'm like coming at his teammates, it's not going to end well for me. And he's a really strong guy. And I feel like when he has that passion in him, he'll beat you up. So Wilson Contreras is my take. And he can take the hits. Like he's a catcher. That's kind of his job.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'm going to give you my like kind of wacko one and then probably my real pick. I haven't thought a ton about this, but my wacko pick is Max Scherzer because like he just kind of looks like when he's in the zone pitching, like he wants to murder everyone. So like if he was running at me, I'd be like, oh my gosh, my life's over right now. What's about to happen? But the guy I'd actually probably pick is Giancarlo Stanton because that dude is just huge. And I know he's thinned out a little bit and lost kind of got a little slimmer, but he's still a giant. Huge muscles. I mean, we can go back like the Ventura thing. Yeah, there's a lot of things in the past, but I think out of like current players, it's probably the guy I'd go with. But hopefully none of us ever have to really get into a benches clearing brawl. But we did want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Tracy's Karate. Tracy's Karate has been serving the local St. Louis community since 1969, specializing in private lessons for practical and effective self-defense instruction. These private lessons allow Tracy's to teach anyone, focusing on your personal goals and your own learning style. Try out a free half-hour private lesson today by calling 314-821-0555 or visiting tracys.com for more details. It's a fantastic opportunity to learn valuable self-defense skills. And if you decide to sign up, let them know that the crew over at the Newt News podcast sent you. Again, their number is 314-821-0555. And the website is Tracy's.com. Thanks, Tracy.
You
So
said it from me.
yeah, I beat you to it. Okay. So Andrew, you gave a compelling case that why they need to go out and get Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery. I think I agree with you. Like, I don't really see a reason not to go out and get one of those guys. They're literally sitting there for the taking. Something that I like, some people have gotten mad that they didn't sign Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery earlier this offseason instead of Lance Lee and Kyle Gibson, which I get that. Like, again, I'd rather have one of them. But that would have meant signing Blake Snell to his $200 million+ deal that he wanted, which would have been ridiculous. And I don't know what Jordan Montgomery wants, but clearly it's too much that, like, no team has paid Montgomery and Snell yet, which means their asking price is too high. What they want right now, though, makes a lot of sense to me. Like, you should be aggressive and go get that. Blake Snell would cost another draft selection, so I don't love that. To me, it would make more sense to go get Montgomery because he's a familiar face, which actually probably would help a lot, especially since he's going to miss a lot of camp. Why not get a guy who's already been in? But either of them, right? Like, again, I don't love this rotation with only Blake Snell or only Jordan Montgomery at the top, but it'll at least be helpful. And then again, when you have Gray healthy, that's really great to have both those guys top of the rotation. And then even if it's a short-term deal, they're probably going to have opt-outs for every year of the deal. So if it's a 4-year deal, they could probably opt out after year 2. And so assuming they have a good or a pretty mid-year, they're going to want to go out and get a larger contract and long-term deal, especially with the next year's free agent class for starting pitchers starting to thin out, even more Zach Wheeler's recent deal. So I would do it, right? And I don't think there's a ton of risk there. And that would be the way that the club could show that it's going to be a contender and that it cares. I just don't see him doing it. And it's beyond frustrating. Like, I'm with people. Like, I get people want to say Gary mows water, but like, I'm equally frustrated by the lack of spending. And sometimes, like, at some point, this conversation, I think we should just be upset. We should be. Sometimes I just don't want to spend 9 months being upset when I can explain, okay, how can they make it work with the current constraints they have? Because this is where I'm going to turn my attention to. I don't know if you touched on it a ton yet, but like, if I'm playing the blame game right now, the ownership is at the very top. And I don't even think it's close. I think it's ownership and then a large gap to the front office. Because at the end of the day, yes, it's for the front office's job. True, it's the front office's job to lobby for more resources, to convince ownership they need to be able to go out and spend more. But at the end of the day, if DeWitt tells John Mozeliak you have this much money to spend, he can't spend more than that. He can't do it. And so I have a hard time believing that if the DeWitts were willing to go out and sign Montgomery or Snell, that Mozeliak would be like, yeah, nah, we're good. I feel like he would want one of them. I again, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not going to tell you I'm right on that, but I have a hard time believing that he would rather have in a vacuum Lance Lynn or Kyle Gibson over one of those guys. But he does work with the budget. Now, you could totally argue, and I totally get this part. I think it's where the front office does fall short, is that they have traded away Zach Gallen. They have traded away Sandy Alcantara. They have traded away some of the wrong guys. And so, like, they could have cost-controlled arms right now that would help them out a ton, right? Or they could have Randy Rosarina as a trade piece still. Like, or they could have traded Tyler O'Neill after his MVP season and got more from him. Like, there's a lot of moves they could have done even within the constraints. So I get it. They are to blame too. I am not absolving them from it. And it's significant blame. But I just put that much blame on the ownership. I just think that it's at some point it's getting old. And I feel like I was not I don't think I was naive this offseason. I felt like the rhetoric that John Mozeliak was using was different than past off seasons. And people wanted to try and tell me that he's always lied and always said they'll spend more. I went and looked at the receipts. And I asked people on Twitter, I was like, hey, tell me times he's lied. Like, and I'm not saying he hasn't lied, but I'm like, tell me when he's told us the wrong things about payroll. And a lot of times it was kind of like these little weird comments where it's like, okay, yeah, he was not being very direct there and he was being misleading. I get it. But he's very rarely gone out and said, I'm going to sign. He's never gone out and been like, I'm going to make this huge move and not do it. Usually he tells you, I'm going to go get a starting catcher, and he does it. Or I'm going to go get 3 starting pitchers, and he does it. He does what he says he's going to do. It might not be how we want him to do it, but he does it. Going to this offseason, he did say the 3 starting pitchers, and then it sounded like maybe 2, but then again, he got 3 like he said he would. But ownership came out for once, and they said, Bill DeWitt Jr. to the St. Louis Business Journal said, we are going to climb the payroll rankings, that we know we need to put butts in seats, and that we need to make big moves to make it happen. Now, he didn't say all those words, so some of it's implied, but like they finally started saying some things like, we need to be aggressive. We learned from some of our mistakes. Maybe we're a little bit too patient last year. Like, they're saying different things. They don't say those things. They don't admit wrongs ever. And then this is the offseason they provided. I gave it like a B- because I was like, okay, if everything goes right and their plan works, it's fine. It gets them back in contention, but it's not good enough. And maybe it was more of a C+. I don't know, C. But they didn't make that A thing because they don't do that anymore. They don't get aggressive. They don't do that. And I put that on ownership because we've plenty of people have covered it and talked about it before, that they went and made a big swing for Giancarlo Stanton. He said no. They were gonna take the biggest contract and it will be history and put it on their payroll. Not that long ago, they went out and tried to sign David Price.
Year. That's okay.
Well, what was that?
They should have done that this year.
Then yeah, okay. They made a great offer. They didn't like put in the second bid. David Price was about to sign the dotted line. And then the Red Sox came in last second, offered $50 million more, and the Cardinals wisely said no at that time. They outbid the Cubs on Jason Hayward, and Jason Hayward said no. They, for some reason back then, the DeWitts were willing to pay. And then the lesson they learned from that is they looked at Giancarlo Stanton struggling, they looked at Jason Hayward struggling, and they looked at David Price struggling. And the lesson they learned was, oh, we don't need to spend that money because look, it doesn't work out. That's a dumb thing. Wrong lesson learned. And I think that's on the DeWitts, and it's not as much on John Mozeliak. Sure, I'm sure there's probably parts of it where he doesn't want to go off certain guys because thinks it'll be a bad investment, all that kind of stuff. But part of that is also when you don't have much money to spend, you have to make good investments, right? Like if they signed Lucas Giolito right now, they'd be in so much trouble because they couldn't have gone out and gotten another guy. They'd be in this situation, and now their rotation would be Michaelis, Matz, Liberatore, McGreevy, and Thompson, and they would have no money to spend. And that's not the fact they don't have more money to spend would not be Mo's fault. That would be the DeWitt's fault. Again, we can talk, and I will totally talk if we want to, about the DeWitt's problem or the Mozeliak's problems, the front office problems. But this situation and the fact that they're not going to be more aggressive, assuming they don't become more aggressive, is a DeWitt problem. And I don't really know how else to say it. Andrew, I don't know if you would agree or disagree. I've been ranting for too long now. I need to.
Yeah, I
guess I need to drink some more of Mo's water so I calm down. I don't know. This is a joke, by the way, guys. This is a joke. I need to defend myself.
But like the TV deal stuff, apparently making revenue shaky and like shaking ownership or whatever, like that's fine. A lot of teams are dealing with that, but the Cardinals always pride themselves on like, hey, we bring in so much attendance, we have such good fans. They treat the fans like they're big market fans. They treat us like Dodgers fans, Yankees fans,
and they themselves sorry to interject, but they themselves have said that it's not a big deal. Like they've gone out and say it hasn't really affected them that much. So if they're going to say that, then they have to own it.
Yeah. So honestly, like we don't have to go over the tax. As I said, there's guys you can move off, salary that you can move off, and you can go get Blake Snell right now. He can be had. And the qualifying offer, in my opinion, isn't even that big of a deal because, correct me if I'm wrong, but Blake Snell, if he opts out after 1 year, and then we can give him a qualifying offer and get that draft pick right back, right? That's how that works. So
yes, yeah.
Like I'm not even all that worried about it. Montgomery has kind of said that he doesn't want to be here, and I think it's only a matter of time before he goes to Boston. Because they lost Giolito, and he like is a perfect fit for that team. So like honestly, I'm not even really looking at him because I don't think he really wants to come back, which is unfortunate. But like Blake Snell was looking at St. Louis earlier in the season. He was like talking to guys who have played here before and was like, hey, how's it like? And usually when you ask Cardinal players, what's it like here, they have nothing but good things to say. So I can't imagine that really like shook his interest in the team. Like he was very interested in coming here. Like before we signed Gray, like people were like, oh, are we going to sign Snell? And I was like, no, I don't really want to sign Snell because he doesn't eat innings. But like now we have the guys that eat innings, right? We have Lennon Gibson. That's kind of their whole job is to cover the innings that a guy like Snell wouldn't necessarily cover. So I'm not really all that hesitant about going out and giving him a short-term deal. You're signing him to like a 1 year, 27 to $30 million deal, like something in that range. He's going to get a higher AAV than he would on a long-term deal, but that's fine because he's probably going to leave after just 1 year. He's going to prove that he's really good, and then he's going to go out and he's going to get more money next year. Like it's crazy to me, honestly, that there's a 2-time Cy Young award sitting out there that like nobody in the league wants, and he could be had at such a like bargain compared to what he was asking for earlier in the offseason, right? Like look at what Yamamoto got. He got like what 12 years, 325 million. That's crazy. Like we're not giving that to Blake Snell. We're not even giving like a third of that to Blake Snell. It's kind of ridiculous to me how the ownership doesn't see that there's this guy out there and gives Mo the green light to go out and spend. It's really frustrating, but
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we've beat this drum a little bit to death. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
The only thing I would say is like, and again, please don't hear this as defending, is it's hard. Like we don't get to be in the negotiation. So I don't know. We think Snell's open to a short-term deal, but is that $40 million AAV? Like, or is that 25? Is that 30? Because that does make a difference. Now, again,
I mean, what frustrates me is that Derek Gould said we haven't even called Boris.
oh yeah, again, that's the problem.
Like we don't know. Like it's the frustration I had with Ohtani. Obviously, Ohtani was going to go to the Dodgers from the moment that he became a free agent, but the fact that we didn't even call him makes me a little bit annoyed, right? Like you need to go out there.
I think we all knew that number was going to be 500 or 600 at minimum. Yeah. So like I think they knew they weren't going to spend that.
But like,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. Anyways, and like, yeah, maybe I don't know. Like, I doubt it. I really doubt this. But maybe if Aaron Nola was willing to come to St. Louis and he didn't, because that was part of it, is that they called. Clearly, he wanted to go back to Philly. They weren't going to get into a bidding war over it. He signed back. I'm still frustrated, but that's happened. Maybe they would have gone after both Gray and Nola. Who knows? And something I 100% agree. I don't think the Cardinals are going to change their tune here, but I do think we need to give it a little bit of like, not need to, but they don't deserve any patience at this point. So I'm not saying we need to give them patience. It has been 24 hours. So there's a world where maybe they get in a room and they're like, and they really look at each other in the eyes and try to be like, okay, are we actually going to roll with Michaelis here as our opening day starter? Are we actually going to do this? Like, is this the world we live in now? I don't know. Something I saw on Twitter, I can't remember who put it. Also, just a quick shout out, Kareem's in the chat right now. He's debuting the first part of his top 30 Cardinals prospects tomorrow on Redbird Rants. Really excited about that. So you guys should check that out. That's something that's to be excited about. Or Andrew's light infamously going out, because it does. If you're listening on audio, it always happens.
I don't remember what's going is like the only thing that's exciting me right now. Also, Brady, you're absolutely right. We're going to sign Ohtani when he's 40, and he's going to be a left-handed bench bat, and he's going to be a bullpen arm, and he's going to provide leadership both ways. That veteran leadership.
Yes, he will. Let's talk a little bit more about just some of this random ranting, but then I do think we should talk about like, can they compete? What does this mean? We can talk both scenarios, like what happened, like the likely scenario, which is Gray's only out for a little bit, and then also the potential doomsday where this is a issue all year, not just this injury, but maybe the hamstring keeps being an issue. But talking about prospects, speaking of Kareem, is that I do kind of like, I think I'd pick Thompson to be in the rotation, but there's a part of me that just kind of wants them to like make this a full-on open competition. And I know it's not likely, but like, why not let Takeo Roby compete for this? Why not let Tink Hence compete for this? Why not let Cooper Jerby compete for this? Like, why? Like, to be honest, I haven't seen enough from Matthew Liberatore with his almost 6 ERA last year in the rotation to make me think he's like a stable option. Thompson had good strikeout stuff, but it was still a high 4.something ERA, 4.7 ERA in the rotation. And then also like, he doesn't eat a lot of innings either. He's pretty short starts. Now, part of that's because they kept whipping him between the rotation and bullpen. But like, anyways, I just wish they would go let some of the more high upside guys potentially have a shot here. And maybe that happens later in the year. Who knows? So,
I'm just glad you didn't say Drew, because I would have slammed some keyboards.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say Drew Rom here or Michael McGreevy or whoever. I mean, McGreevy's stuff looks somewhat better. I don't know. I'm still not sold on this McGreevy bandwagon. But yeah, okay. So let's. I don't know. I don't know. I think we could beat the horse dead here. I think everyone agrees. We wish they would do more. They probably won't do more. It's frustrating. We can get more into it, but
Don't harass the
um,
writers on Twitter. They can't do
yeah,
anything.
that's another thing. Is like I meant to say this 1.2. Like it's not Katie Woo's fault. It's not Derek Gould's fault. It's not Gould's fault. It's not Jeff Jones' fault. It's not John Denton's fault. Like they don't do it, and they do ask hard questions. I was at Winter Warm Up, and when the DeWitts, especially when the DeWitts walked in the room, Derek Gould asked some really pointed questions at them, and they tried to answer only parts of it. And Gould would stop them and say, "Hey, no, I asked this question." And he said, "You didn't answer this part." They press them, okay? Like, and also, I'm gonna be honest. Like, if you want real answers from someone, I don't think walking into their face and yelling at them every time and telling them they're lying to you is gonna get them to open up to you. So you have to build some kind of rapport with someone, and they ask hard questions when they need to. So don't I hate when people do that. It's really frustrating because these people provide great coverage, hard work. They care about the fans. They care about getting the right information out there. They're also reporters. So they're supposed to report information. They're not supposed to, their job isn't to go there and tell them what to do, to give them their theories. It's to report. And so they ask questions to try and get real answers from them about why they're not doing what they think they should do. It's ridiculous. Like we have the ability on this podcast and our Red Bird and stuff like that to give our opinions on things. They can kind of do that, but their job is to report the facts and to build relationships and to get the information. And they do that at an incredible rate in St. Louis. And we do not appreciate how great of beat writers we have most of the time. So I know that it's usually a vocal minority. I think most people love these, like Derek, Katie, Jeff, all these, like all the writers, Brendan, like whoever you want to name, like most people really enjoy them. But there's this few that just want to berate them, and it's super annoying, and just stop. So sorry. Maybe I'm holding the Cardinals media water now. Should I get one of those? I don't know. Like, well, what should I do? Should I hold? No, I'm not gonna say it. Anyways, I'm getting frustrated. So if I wasn't already, so let's move on. Do you think they can compete? You go. What do you think?
It just depends on how this injury works and like if it comes back to bite them in the future. Like if this is it and like he misses 2 games, that's fine. If we lose 2 more games this season, honestly, the division race might be close enough where those 2 games will really matter. And
Sure.
like I can see a world where like we finish ahead of the Reds by like 2 games, and also a world where we finish behind them by 2 games. Like it's very doable. Like I just don't know if those 2 games are going to be that critical where we're going to need like Blake Snell to fill those 2 games. Otherwise, we're doomed, right? Like I don't think that's going to happen. But if it's more than 2 games and he only makes like 25 starts, 20 starts this season, then we're in really big trouble, right? Then it becomes like a lot of games that we're going to throw away because we started somebody who wasn't ready or someone who couldn't eat enough innings. And then we have a rotation that's extremely comparable to last year's rotation, minus Jordan Montgomery, who probably would have gotten down ballot Cy Young votes if we didn't trade him to the American League halfway through the season, right? Like it's not a good look. And I don't know, I'm kind of frustrated with this whole situation. And it just depends on whether or not Sonny Gray's going to be 100% healthy, because it's something that's nagged him his entire career. And who knows if this is just the start of like maybe the contract that we signed him to looks really bad because the hamstring injury comes back in multiple ways, not just this year, but in the future. Like it could be one of those contracts that just doesn't look good down the line. And I don't want to say that before he's even thrown a single pitch, but we're already seeing the warning signs with Sonny Gray. And I don't know. I hope he's completely fine, but there's part of me that just doesn't think that that's possible.
Yeah, while we're talking, I'm going to try and bring up I know we talked about this in one of our player profiles, but I would still say, like I saw Jeff said in the chat, I do think this rotation is better than last year, even without Gray, which is crazy. I do think maybe it's a little bit more comparable to the first half, though, where they did have Montgomery, Jack, Michaelis, Matz. But let's remember how they were pitching back then. Jordan Montgomery started off the year slow. So like April, he wasn't as good as he was now. He had not a great month. Jack Flaherty was bad to start the year. Adam Wainwright was on the IL, so Jake Woodford. And Jake Woodford, I think, made 0 quality starts last year, so he was bad. Adam Wainwright was awful when he came back in. And Steven Matz was terrible to begin the year. So not a single one of their starters, all 5 of them were bad to start the year. And like not just like they were either really, really bad or bad. Now, I think of the like, could they compete as like how much room for error do they have now? They probably had like this much room for error when healthy with Gray. Without Gray healthy, it's like this. Well, my fingers are way off. It's like this because if Steven Matz goes down, which is possible, now you have a rotation of Lynn, Gibson, Michaelis, Liberatore, and Thompson. Okay, not great. If we go back, though, I think Gray's only missing a couple starts. I don't think it's the end of the world. I still like this team. I still think it's a team that could win 88, 89, maybe 90 games. But that's also like if the offense is really good, the bullpen's good, and the rotation stays healthy. That's a lot of ifs. Like not everything works out like that. Let me pull up some of the how bad the back end of the rotation was. So here's some of the ERAs from the guys. So they got 60 starts between Wainwright, Rom, Liberatore, Hudson, and Woodford last year. Here was all their ERAs on the season: 8.02, 5.88, 5.62, and 6.95. I left out one of their ERAs. I can't find it. But they're all their ERAs. The guys that made 60 starts between them ranged from 5.26 to 8.02 was Wainwright. He was giving up 8 runs every 9 innings. That is historically bad. So I'm not trying to tell you the rotation's like good, but it's the back end has made a major, major might be a strong word, but like a substantial step forward. And so I think that's where like, okay, if the offense is good and the bullpen's good and they get Gray back healthy, I think they're okay. They're okay. But again, if Gray goes down, this gets really messy because let's walk through a world where Gray's hurt. They can run into the same issues they did last year where they're getting 3 or 4 straight bad starts. The bullpen's getting taxed. The lineup is pressing. Then the bullpen is starts to crack because it's been used too much. And now the rotation isn't giving them enough starts. And then the rotation starts giving them starts, but the bullpen's blowing the leads. And now the whole team is in disarray. And now things are blowing up. Like I think that's what like the Gray injury opens them up to is the potential for things to fall apart again like it did last year. Where I think if Gray's healthy, which again he should be back pretty soon, like into the season, things will be fine. So, yeah, like if this becomes a recurring issue throughout the year, like you said, he only makes like 20 starts, then it's actually, I think that's a pretty big issue. So none of this, even my optimism about they can be okay with Gray being healthy like he should be, or being able to survive stretches where he's not there. I think the ability to survive though went from this to this. Like they just have barely any room to fail. They can't have the lineup put up duds. Like they just can't afford it. They can't afford the bullpen to have a bad 2-week stretch. They can't afford it. And it still doesn't change the fact they need to go out and get another guy, whether that's Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, go trade for a guy. But I don't know. I feel like we sound like a broken record now. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but I'm not yelling at you. I'm not yelling at anyone in the chat. I'm just voicing my frustration like most of you are. So
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I want to hit on, I like being a schedule pod. And we open with 4 against the Dodgers. And forgive me if I hold the Dodgers water a little bit, but that lineup is really good. Like there's just no way around that. And you're opening that's their first series at home with their super team, right? They built a super team this offseason. And like, do you really expect to go into LA with the rotation of Michaelis, Gibson, Lynn, and Matz and win more than like one of those games? Like, I feel like there's just no way, right? Like, I know it's right behind me. I'll take it down when the series starts, right? Like, it's not going to be there when we preview the Dodgers series to open the series because I just don't want to see that back there, and I won't. The Dodgers like fandom will be completely sucked out of me for that weekend. But like Ohtani, do you expect him to not like put up a show in his first series in LA? Like he
I
does
just
every time he steps on the field, he does something special. So like
yeah.
I don't see how you can go in there with a rotation that's like 35 years old
Yeah,
on aggregate and pitch to like a collective 4.7 ERA last year.
it's
I just don't.
Kareem. Lance Lynn's gonna
It doesn't.
throw a no hitter against LA revenge game.
Hey, that would be great. But I can't see it happening. And you have to start strong. And then you go into San Diego. That team has a lot to prove. Miami made the playoffs last year. The Phillies are really good, and the
Yeah.
Diamondbacks are also really good. So you open against all of those teams. I don't think you can start the season really good at all. And at that point, if the team is like what 8-12, at that point, honestly, I would take that. That doesn't sound all that
Oh
bad to
yeah,
me.
just slightly under
But
500 wouldn't be bad.
like then you start to see turmoil in the clubhouse, right? Then Ollie starts to be on the hot seat because he needed to start the season really well. It's just like it could completely fall apart like it did last year.
Yeah,
Right? Seeing
I
all the
guess
warnings.
part of the where I would disagree on that is like it was like historically bad start last year. They started 10-24. Like if they're 8-12, they already have 80% of their wins and like 30% less of the game. I don't know how many. I can't do math in my head like that, but like that'd be a very different start. Winning 8 of your first 20, then winning 10 of your first 34. Like that's a very different start. I also like I it's the regular season and it's baseball. So like I don't like we're gonna it's gonna be May and June and July, and we're gonna not like we'll remember the Dodgers series, but it won't matter that much. Like
Right.
I think the totality of the week of the totality of the month matters, obviously, and the momentum and stuff. But I I think we're putting so much stock in. I hear all the time, like they open up in LA. How are they going to handle those 4 games? How are they going to handle those 4 games? Like they have 158 games after those 4 games. And I'm not saying you're like putting too much stock in it, but like, and also again, it's baseball. So like Lance Lynn could give up 4 runs in 6 innings, and the bullpen could be lights out or only give up 1 run. And who knows? Glass now goes like 4 or 5 innings with 1 or 2 runs, and then one of the random Dodger relievers gives up a couple runs, and like the Cardinals can slug their way to a win. Like I can see the Cardinals splitting. I mean, obviously, it'd be a surprise if they win 3 or 4, sweep the Dodgers. Like that'd be a surprise. But I'm not gonna like be like, oh, they cannot win. They're gonna give up 130 runs and it's over. Like, sure, that could happen, but also like the A's, I feel like swept a couple teams last year and they were awful. Like, so that's where I'm kind of like, I just we'll see. We'll see how the team's playing. And also, what if the Dodgers start slow? Like that could happen. Like, who knows? Like, and they're not going to start slow as in like a 3-17 team, but like they might not be on that 120 win pace at the beginning of the year, you know? So I don't know. And they have their own injury concerns. I mean, like there's still the rest of spring. What if Glass now has his yearly injury that everyone likes to tell me he has? You know, what if Yamamoto has something? God forbid, what if Otani has something? Like things can happen. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to talk myself into things being okay now, but I think Jeff's right. I'm not going to jump off the ledge. Like
I mean,
it's
they haven't played any games yet, obviously. Like
yeah,
you play the games for a reason, but like I
and
just don't
also,
see a lot of ways to win early in the season.
but
And
here's the
getting
thing.
off to a hot start is most important to me this year, I think.
Yeah, but the other part I just don't think we talk enough about is they've gotten better this offseason. Obviously, not having Gray makes them way less better than they are. But like, I'm just gonna be honest, I still think Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson are upgrades over Adam Wainwright for sure. And whoever filled that other 4th spot at times, which was usually Woodford or Rom or Liberatore or whoever.
I
But
mean,
then
okay, well, you're comparing that to like the end of season where we're starting Hudson and Wayno and Rom, and like that doesn't
Okay,
really.
yes, but Steven Matz started the beginning of the year was awful. He had a 7-year array. So like you could say the first month they replaced Steven Matz is awful, which again, maybe Steven Matz is awful, but I don't see him being that bad again. And replaced Wayno/Woodford at the beginning of the year, which was terrible. So like I just the all 5 starters were terrible to start the year last year. But then also the Cardinals underachieved last year too. They weren't just a bad 71 to win team. Nolan Arenado was not good. Like the first half he was good, but the second half he's terrible. Paul Goldschmidt was not himself. Wilson Contreras in the first half was awful. Second half was top 5 hitter in baseball. Jordan Walker didn't really come into himself and come into his own until the second half. Tommy Edman was playing shortstop with Paul DeYoung. Now it's Mason Wynn, and I'm really excited about him. Tyler O'Neill was being Tyler O'Neill. Lars Nootbaar was hurt. Brendan Donovan was hurt. Nolan Gorman was hurt. Like, the team was not playing to its potential. It was not just playing to its potential. It was underachieving hard last year. Bullpen was terrible. I just think there's a lot of things like natural positive regression for them, plus improvements to the bullpen. Like, I think it's inarguable that the bullpen is much better on paper than it was last year. And then the rotation should be a slight upgrade. Like, so I just, that's from also like the doom and gloom of it's another 10 and 24 start, all this stuff. Like, sure, it's in the range of outcomes, but how likely? I don't think that's super likely. I see this team being more slightly below 500 or 500 at worst. And then potentially they're a winning ball club in the first month. I don't know. So anyways, and sure, if you don't think the Cardinals are better, that's fine. We'll see what happens when the games are played. I could be wrong. You could be wrong. I don't accept the fact though that it's just so clear that they're not going to be good. Like, I just don't know how people know that, because on paper they're much better than people give them credit for usually. Minus Gray, it's difficult to see though.
Real quick, I just don't want to blame the WBC for anything because I really like the WBC. Just wanted to that real quick. Both MVPs last year played in the WBC, so I don't really think it affected that many players' performance. If it affected the Cardinals because there weren't that many guys in camp, then that's kind of their own problem. Other teams seem to have figured it out, so it is what it is.
Yeah, and hey, Matt's right. Hitting home runs again.
We have one, yeah.
We got one home run now. So also, okay, that's something like, I'm going to be honest. If there was a team in baseball that didn't need a homerless start to the spring, it was the Cardinals, because everyone's going to freak out about it. I'm not. If they were slugging, had the most home runs in spring training, I'm sure. I mean, I probably, because I'm more optimistic, would be like, whoa, look at that. But like, it doesn't matter, because remember they won the most spring training games last year, and everyone's told me that didn't matter. So you can't tell. We can't play the game where success doesn't matter, but underperformance does matter. You can't play that game.
I'll never buy into spring training stats again, because Paul DeYoung in like 2021 or whatever had like a 1700 OPS in spring training, and it was just horrific throughout the entire season. And last year, the two spring training champions were the Cardinals and the Angels, and that was the last time I was like, oh wow, this is cool being a baseball fan.
Or like Mason Wynn was awesome in spring training. They sent him to AAA and he started the year slow. Like, I mean, it's just, we'll see what happens. I don't know. So I don't know. Yeah. Thanks for everyone who's kind of bared with us for this one. We felt like it was kind of important to go ahead and talk about it. I don't know if there's any lingering questions in the chat going on if you're listening to audio. And again, if you're watching now live, or you're watching later, if you can subscribe, it's huge for the channel, helps out a ton. And again, we've got multiple podcast episodes that come out a week, these player profiles that we're doing, other creative content that's really fun. So there's some great stuff there. Go grab some emos. I don't know if I should give my hot take about emos right now, but I don't know if I'll make people mad. But Andrew, anything else you want to cover before we call it an evening?
No, that's it. You're not even from St. Louis. What do you know about emos?
I've eaten it before.
Okay, I don't know.
Okay, maybe that's my problem. Is I think I had it the first time I had it was a bad experience, and then the second time was kind of like, I don't know if it got that much better. So maybe I just had bad Emo's pizza. But anyways, I just was like, whoa, this is.
I mean, it's all right. It's not my favorite. I don't like Dewey's Pizza. Like, Dewey's Pizza is good, but the DeWitts own it, so I don't buy from there anymore.
I've never been Dewey's Pizza.
Yeah, but
do you guys have Monocles down there? I like Monocles.
I don't think so.
It's a kind of a chain in mid central Illinois. Anyways,
also why I don't go to Arby's anymore. I actually never went to Arby's.
We have the meats. Anyways, well, for anyone who thinks I held Mo's water too much tonight, I'm sorry. I tried not to. I think I was very critical. So but mostly the DeWitts, because again, I think it's an ownership thing. Again, if you can subscribe, it's huge for the podcast. And we're excited to bring more Cardinals content. Hopefully we have some more positive news to talk about this coming weekend. We have some more fun stuff to talk about, have more player profiles coming out, all that jazz. So should be a good time. Again, thanks to everyone who's subscribed and who's checking us out tonight. We really appreciate it. Love all the support, and just you guys make this really worthwhile. So thanks for everything you do with that. And then again, also just quick plug for Kareem, the Cardinals top 100 or top 30 prospects. His first version of that's coming out tomorrow. We're really excited about that. But other than that, thanks again to Tracy's Karate for powering this episode, and like, subscribe on the way out, and we will see you next time.